No flag, but there should have one. Good Googa Mooga to that. Time for the PFT Power Rankings. Presented by Toyota. No PFT sticker over that logo. Thank you very much, Toyota. We try to deliver to you some of the best power rankings around, and I couldn't resist it, Charean. Look, I've always had kind of a college football poll approach where if you're number one and you keep winning, you stay number one until you lose. And the 49ers, I mean, a 7-point win over the Rams, and the Dolphins, a 7-point win, right, over the Patriots, right? Wasn't they fine? Eagles, 6-point win over the Vikings. Like, none of them should have dropped, but the Cowboys are the best team right now. Like, I'm not going to respect this outdated, easy for him to say, notion of hierarchy and propriety and, you know, they didn't lose, you can't drop them. The Cowboys are the best team right now. I think we can admit that. I don't think you would disagree with that, as evidenced by the Roger Staubach jersey hanging behind you. Am I wrong to think the Cowboys are the best team right now?
No, and it's been a long time since you could say that. You know, since 1995, which was the last time they went to the championship game, really there's been only 3 seasons when I would say they were the best team in the NFL, or could be considered that. 2007, they were 13-3. 2014, they were 12-4. In 2016, they were 13-3. And, of course, all 3 of those seasons ended in disappointment in the playoffs. Still haven't been to an NFC championship game since 1995. But after 2 games this year, absolutely. I think they're playing the best football in the NFL. Can they sustain that? You're going to have injuries, Mike. Where are those injuries going to come? What position are those injuries going to come? If it's Micah Parsons, if it's Dak Prescott, there are a couple guys they cannot afford to lose. But if they don't lose those big-name guys who make a difference on their team, this is a team that's going to have a chance in the postseason. They'll have to end that history of futility in the postseason, but they'll have a chance.
Now, if they lose Micah Parsons, they have a major problem. Sims and I were talking about him as an MVP candidate, not Defensive Player of the Year, but potential MVP candidate, given how dominant he's been so far. But hey, if Dak Prescott gets injured, I heard Stephen Jones say it himself last week, that's why they got Trey Lance. Got Trey Lance in the event that you lose Dak Prescott. Yeah. Not as leverage against this massive nearly $69 million, or not nearly $60 million cap number next year. Not quite 69, $60 million for Dak Prescott next year. Regardless. Okay, so Cowboys up to number 1, Seahawks back in the top 10 after the overtime win over the Lions, and the Bengals are all the way down to number 21 because, look, until the Bengals prove it, they've been bad. They've looked bad. They've looked inept. Whether it's the Joe Burrow injury, whether the offense is too predictable, whatever the case may be, the Bengals fall off this first screen, which will surprise a lot of people if we had told them that 2 weeks ago. But if you watch the first 2 games, losses to the Browns and the Ravens, you understand why. Now, and that leads to the first question that we have today. We put out, and we want to make sure we answer as many as we can, a call for questions on Twitter last night. And a lot of people had questions. Some had rude comments. What a shock. Rude comments directed to other people, a feature of Twitter since the inception of the platform. Sports BP asks this question. Honestly, what have the Chiefs done to be ahead of the Ravens? If you're going off previous years, it makes sense, but in this year, they shouldn't be that high. And as you may have noticed on the graphic, the Chiefs are at 5, the Ravens are at 6. The Ravens are up 3 points over last week. The Chiefs, I left where they were. They got leapfrogged by the Cowboys. They were at 5. They stayed at 5. Now, I think this one's very simple. The Ravens have not looked great on offense. They're moving in the right direction. They've beaten a couple of teams that, at least for now, are grossly inferior. The Texans, we saw what happened with them against the Colts. They're one of the worst teams in football. The Bengals, as of right now, have kind of lost their way. It's great for the Ravens that they managed to get 2 wins, as this offense is a work in progress. I think if I was a Ravens fan, I'd just be happy to be number 6. Just be happy to be number 6. Did you really think you were going to be number 6 through 2 weeks? And now you want to be number 5? You want to flip-flop with the Chiefs? Can't you just be happy you're number 6, Charean?
Well, and I think they should be happy they're number 6. The Chiefs' loss came when they didn't have Travis Kelce and they didn't have Chris Jones. They have both of those guys back. I think we saw the difference that those two guys make for that team. So I think the Chiefs, as defending Super Bowl champions with a 1-1 record, are right where they should be, and the Ravens should probably be happy to be number 6 at this point. They'll get their chance to prove that they're better at the Chiefs this season.
Next question comes from Reg Skinner. Why are the Giants higher than their division mate Commanders? Hashtag make it make sense. And it's as simple as this. The Giants started high. The Commanders started low. And they're kind of moving together. Now, the Giants bumped the spot. They did win. For as bad as it looked early, they did come back and win the game. It doesn't matter how you get there. They got there. Down 28-7 in the third quarter, they won the game against the Cardinals. That erases some of the stink of the 40-0 loss. Now, if they had ended up losing to the Cardinals, the Giants probably would have fallen all the way down to the bottom of the stack, if not close to it. But they pulled off the victory. The Commanders, yes, they're 2-0. They could easily be 0-2. They could have lost to the Cardinals, just like the Giants could have lost to the Cardinals. And they had to come back from a massive deficit, which they get credit for. They're up 5 spots. 5 spots after beating the Broncos when they were way behind. So, again, you tell me 2 weeks ago Commanders are going to be number 15 after 2 games. If I'm a Commanders fan, I'm pretty happy with that, Charean.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see the Commanders, Mike. I haven't seen either of their first 2 games in full, and I'm looking forward to that. And Commanders fans finally are excited about this season. I think they sold out their game. I think they're play at home this week and have sold out their – none of this stuff would have happened with Daniel Snyder that they're doing right now. They wouldn't have been excited by this team if Daniel Snyder still owned the team. A lot of excitement there, and I want to see the Commanders, and I think they're going to have a good year based on the first 2 games and what we've seen from Sam Howell. I think this is a team that has a chance, at least in the NFC, to make the postseason.
Our good friend Arizona UK, who has been submitting questions to this program all the way back to the very early days, 2011 or thereabouts. Are there any coaches, quote, quietly happy, quote, water, quietly happy to be in the bottom 10, whispers Sean Payton. And, I hadn't thought of it this way, but we talked about this earlier with Deshaun Watson. Year 1, it's on the coach. Year 2, it's on the quarterback. And we're already hearing it from Sean Payton, that Bill Parcells attitude, making it clear in his comments to the media what the issue is. The issue is the quarterback. The issue isn't the verbiage. The issue is he's got a quarterback that can't process the verbiage. He's got a quarterback who has resisted in the past wearing a wristband to simplify things. In all the years that Sean Payton and Drew Brees were joined at the hip, was there ever a concern about the verbiage? Was there ever a concern about getting plays in? That offense ran like it was intended to run. And if you can't run it the way Sean Payton wants it to be run, he's not adapting to you. You adapt to him, or he finds someone who will, Charean. So, to the extent that the Broncos may stink this year, and frankly, the schedule gets a lot more difficult than Raiders and Commanders, maybe it is a good thing for Sean Payton. Maybe it makes it easier to go out and find the guy who can come in and supplant Russell Wilson, because it could happen as soon as next year. They got a $35 million future guarantee that vests fully in March. If this continues, if he can't coax more out of Russell Wilson and start winning some games, he may be very happy to finish with a top 10 draft pick.
Yeah, and, he said at one point that he was, I don't know the exact words, but basically paraphrasing, he was going to be disappointed if this wasn't a playoff team. He knew what he was getting into when he went to the Broncos.
He said he'll be pissed.
Okay, that's what it was. So, but he knew, he's realistic. He knew the roster that he had. Now he's had all these injuries, particularly at the receiver position. He knew what he had with the quarterback or didn't have with the quarterback, as the case may be. He knew what he was getting into, playing in the AFC, playing in the AFC West. He knew all those things. This is going to be a building process. This is not going to be as quick a turnaround as it was for him in New Orleans in the first year. I think he knew all that. Saying the right things, but he knew all that. So, yeah, if they get a top 10 pick, he goes and gets his quarterback, and he has the quarterback to build for the future. So there is that for the Broncos that's out there if they aren't very good this year. I tell you one guy, though, Mike, who's not happy to be in the bottom 10, that's Bill Belichick.
That's true, because if he finishes in the bottom 10, it may not be him making that top 10 draft pick next year. That's one of the things that just continues to be overlooked. The comments that Robert Kraft, the owner of the team, made back in March, things he said since then, I think Bill Belichick's on notice. And if they finish last in that division, could be. And people will be stunned. Oh, I can't believe it. And they wouldn't fire him. It would be a mutual parting, retirement, whatever term they'd want to use. It would be a Bruce Arians-style retirement where he retires and then go coaches somewhere else, like they did to him in Pittsburgh 12 years ago. I'll say this, though, about Peyton. He's on record about tanking. He was on PFT Live in that window where he wasn't coaching. He would never deliberately try to lose. They won't tank.
Yeah.
If it happens naturally, so be it. But he believes that from the cultural standpoint of the team, you can't allow that mindset to creep into your locker room. You have to be wired every week to be doing everything you can to win. And the players can sense when that's not what's happening. And you can't turn over your whole roster in 1 year. This isn't a Deion Sanders situation where he just walks in and says, you know what? And he basically said this in the 60 Minutes profile they did of him on Sunday night. One of the reasons they only won one game last year is the coaches, and another reason is the players. The coaches brought in these players. These players aren't good enough. We're going to run them off. You can't do that in the NFL. Some of those guys from a bad team are going to be there the next year. You can't bottom out, hit a reset button, and just bring in a new team. So once you let those guys be part of a culture of losing that doesn't prioritize winning over all things, it's hard to get it back. So my point is this. If it happens to Denver, it's going to happen over the very loud and persistent efforts of Sean Payton to win every game he possibly can, even if it comes down to the last game of the season, and a loss would deliver the first overall pick in the draft. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.